Hey guys, Spartan1170W here. I know I've been kind of slacking on the video, so I'm going to be uploading more often. A lot of it was just trying to reconfigure the studio to kind of best suit the needs that I need. Also, first thing I want to get out of the way, I got a couple discounts for you. Usually Spartan or Spartan1170W. They're on the links below for Titan Power batteries, which is awesome batteries for airsoft guns, and a couple other things for Mechanics Wear LBX. So make sure to check out the discounts if you want to save some money on some cool stuff. So first, let's get into the game. Now, I've been a long-time Ghost Recon fan, and I've actually been to Red Storm. I was invited by Travis Gates, who's the authenticity coordinator, basically the guy who kind of make sure that they get the right kind of weapons or right kind of tactics, and try to put as much authenticity into the game. I learned about him way back during the Advanced Warfighter days, and then later on around the Future Soldier era is when I got to actually go to Red Storm. So been familiar with those guys and been a big fan of the Tom Clancy franchise. Tom Clancy franchise is a little bit different than it used to. Definitely appeals to more of a mainstream audience, but the Ghost Recon franchise has evolved with that over time, going from a super hardcore shooter, and then it started getting a little bit linear, but they added a couple new features, like the whole weapons customization was freaking awesome. One of the things that's kind of cool, might not be common knowledge, when that came out, one of the developers behind Medal of Honor Warfighter was like, oh my god, I wish we had that in our game. So that kind of gives you an idea of how good the customization was. They took that to Wildlands as well, and Wildlands is ultimately kind of where the franchise ended up until recently. So it basically became like an open world shooter. It was super customizable, and one thing that I really appreciate is that over time they added special operations missions that really added a little bit more depth, or kind of crossed franchises, if you will, with like Splinter Cell and Rainbow Six, which I thought was awesome. Something that I personally really want the Tom Clancy franchise to do, and I don't think they'll ever get to do it because the studios are different, but would love to see a universe of Tom Clancy games that were more interconnected, where each game, almost like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you have the game universe of Tom Clancy, right, where one game leads into the next, and you have a cumulative game after each phase that kind of combines characters from all three of those franchises, and you have another phase. So that'd be kind of a cool concept to apply to the video game universe. But regardless, the special operations missions and Ubisoft and the studio is actually kind of really following up with development of the game and adding new content, new gear, new weapons, new accessories. Huge kudos to those guys, because not a lot of studios will do that as much anymore and do it in such a timely manner. I mean, the Predator update was freaking amazing. Talk about fan service. They really knew how to do it there. And of course, like the Splinter Cell mission was one of my favorites as well, but the Predator one was badass. And then of course the last one, Oracle, talks basically about Walker, who's a ghost, and how his character relates to the new game. So the new game, Ghost Recon Breakpoint, essentially is they've taken the formula of Wildlands, taken the feedback, and they've kind of gone in almost a slightly more hardcore direction. And it's interesting some of the things that they've changed. So first off, in single player, you don't have your AI companions, although you do have drones who can help you with sync shot and stuff like that. So that's something that's kind of interesting. I don't know if they just want to make it so they force players to use multiplayer with their friends, and that is a great experience. Although I was one of those people that did love playing single player with your AI and kind of customizing your squad. They did love playing single player with your AI and kind of customizing your squad out to have like a full squad. In a way, I feel like that's something that might be lacking, because that was a lot of fun to play around with, especially if you're a single player guy. You also have the new healing mechanics, where essentially your character takes like progressive, like semi-permanent but not quite permanent damage. So when you get shot, or when interacting with the terrain, you can't just run down the hill willy-nilly anymore, because you'll hurt yourself. And so you really have to pick your approaches and how you manage the terrain, and that's kind of an interesting idea. It's more realistic, rolling your angles and things like that. But it's interesting to see how now you can get shot and wounded and stuff like that, and now you have to manage that, because your character at one point they'll stop being able to run, and at another point they'll stop being able to use their primary weapon. You're stuck with a secondary weapon. But then you can also heal yourself with tourniquets and other things like that. And then I know everyone on the internet keeps saying bivy, the whole word, right? No one in the military really says that. We just say bivy. Essentially, it's just like sleeping bags and kind of like a temporary like fighting position / sleeping position with your whole overnight setup and whatnot. But you can do crafting and stuff like that. So starting to see more elements of other Ubisoft franchises really kind of pouring their way into Ghost Recon. So it'll be interesting to see that. And also this kind of plays to the more almost survival, evasion, resistance, escape, the seer aspect of the game. Now, I don't know if you're going to get captured or anything, so who knows if you get captured and have to actually capture the escape part. But at least the survival and the evasion part seems to play a role in the game, because you're having to like do things like this camouflage feature where you can roll on the ground and put mud and stuff on you. And if you've ever messed around with a ghillie suit before, it's really interesting when people get really close to you but they don't see you, which is a super satisfying feeling. And tactically it's like you feel like you got God mode unlocked. But yeah, that's a cool feature I think that's in the game, having that kind of ability to camouflage yourself in close proximity with the enemy. So that'll be something cool to play around with. Also, the new animation systems, just watching how the character is moving through the environment, crawling through the environment, I feel like they've really stepped up their motion capture and performance capture with the actors, and even whether they're messing around with keyframes and stuff like that. Because like some of the hand-to-hand combat stuff, although a little bit showy, super badass. Just the different ways, like, you know, crawling up to a guy and then knocking him down and then killing him, or just head-on colliding into somebody and then using some cool hand-to-hand techniques and then finishing him off with the knife. So definitely a little more artsy, but that is really, really cool to see in the game, and kind of add some variety to some of the engagements you have when you're eliminating bad guys in the game. Weapons wise, it's cool to see that they're expanding the weapons. I hope they bring the same amount of accessories and weapons that we kind of got toward the end of Wildlands, because Wildlands gear wise was cool. It was still a lot of stuff, but kind of lacking, and they really added on to it. Like what the game is now is kind of what we wish the game started out with. Even weapons wise too, because we didn't really get true HK stuff until later on. So there's some SIG stuff in the game, as you could see, and there's some other cool weapons, and then they finally brought an anti-armor weapon system into the game, so thank God. It's like a not Carl Gustav, kind of Carl Gustav, based off, like you look at the dang thing, it's kind of like a Carl. But that's going to be cool to have in the game, because you're going to be fighting against like armored drones and stuff, unmanned ground vehicles, unmanned UAVs, all kinds of stuff. So like, and if you're not aware of the plot, essentially it's in this kind of fictional Pacific island that has all these different terrain features, which is really cool. Not really realistic in that aspect, but the fact that it has all the cool features, including a volcano, is really, really cool and fantastic. And it's basically like a rogue CEO kind of who's been working on this whole tech industry, and who's basically been building drones, and has kind of gone rogue, and now he has this rogue opposing force, which is essentially equivalent to the Ghosts. And what's interesting about this game is that the Ghosts are kind of underdogs. Like, they're literally going to make this hit, and you see their Blackhawks get shot down. They just get schwacked, and goes immediately into the survival and evasion part of the mission. And that's going to be kind of cool, because the other guy is one of the main villains is, I believe, Colonel Walker, who's a former Ghost. And I really like that they're expanding on this, because they had a mission that was similar to this in Wildlands, where one of the bad guys is a former Ranger. But, like, other than, like, you know, just killing him, you're told, go find this guy, you go kill him, there wasn't that much of an impact. There was a little bit of dialogue snippet, but I really wish there was a bigger story arc there, and more of a payoff, because that's a really interesting dynamic to play with. Someone who's a former ally or a former of the same kind of, you know, bloodline or whatever, who's now the enemy. So, and, you know, the enemy in the game, both the drones and the fighting force there, is going to be pretty superior in number and technology. You really are the underdogs here, which is going to be an interesting concept to play with. between all those elements all together, and just the weapons customization and everything, I really hope that they really combine those elements into a good way. And I mean, it's funny, like, just looking at the footage, it just reminds me of Lone Survivor when you're like tumbling down the hill and everything like that. So that'll be interesting to play around with, and how those mechanics kind of interplay with the game. I think from just like cool tactical gun kind of perspective, just as long as they have a lot of cool guns and gear, I think we'll be good to go. So if you're a gear whore, hopefully they keep that up. So super excited for the game, and can't wait for the beta and E3 to see what else comes up. So check it out, Ghost Recon, and really excited to see what the franchise has for us. So thank you guys for watching. This is Spartan117GW from Off Duty Gamers, and I'll see you guys next time.